In September of 2005, almost 14 years ago, Valve announced that they would be adding a new class-based multiplayer shooter to their catalog. No, this wasn't Team Fortress 2, which wasn't released until 2007. This was a World War II shooter that today is often completely forgotten. It's barely even mentioned anymore, which is a travesty. Today, let's remember Day of Defeat. When DoD was announced as a Valve property, Steam was so new and young that articles written at the time spent an entire paragraph explaining what Steam was. People didn't just know Steam. No, Steam was a new player in a small box called digital downloads. In fact, people who owned the Half-Life Gold Pack got the game for free, but they had to be emailed so that they could preload the game and actually play it when it was released. Valve promised at least a week of preload availability, which should tell you the kind of internet connections that they expected players to have. This game is just under 400 megs, and they thought it might take up to a week to download. Regardless, download it people did. I personally believe that DoD is the finest World War II shooter ever made. I can't even tell you the number of hours I put into it because Steam didn't track hours back then. Similar to Counter-Strike, Day of Defeat was a Half-Life mod created by members of the community, which was eventually purchased by Valve. The original mod, which came out in 2000, was free, just another game mode that owners of Half-Life could load into. Mods are easily the reason that Half-Life stuck around for so long. Yes, it's an excellent game. But the fact that you could defuse a terrorist's bomb, engage in cultured assassinations, explore the existentialism of existence, play like a kid again, explore the existence of existentialism, and pretend to be someone else for a while, and do all of this from inside the same server browser is the reason why people kept playing it. As with all of the games just mentioned, Day of Defeat had enough of an audience to turn into a quote-unquote real game, and Valve did just that. The retail version of Day of Defeat was released in 2003, published by Activision as part of Valve's partnership with them. At the time, it was ironically called out for being too similar to Battlefield 1942, which was released just a few months earlier, even though it's more likely that 1942 was influenced by Day of Defeat as a mod. It's certainly within the realms of possibility. A few years after that, they would release Day of Defeat Source, a remake in the newer Source engine that would go on to power Half-Life 2. And for a few years, DoD was regularly updated with thousands of players every day. The gameplay is pretty simple. There's nothing about this game that today would shock you. It consisted of two game modes, a domination-style territory control, where you would take and hold various points around a map, and a rush-style attack-and-defend objective-based game mode called Detonation. Players could choose from 6 different classes, from the Close Quarters Assault role, the Battlefield Commanding Machine Gunners, and the High-Skill, High-Reward Sniper. The roles are pretty standard. That's probably how I would describe Day of Defeat. It is standard. That's not surprising, though, because it is the game that defined multiplayer World War II shooters for a lot of people, in the same way that Counter-Strike defined competitive shooters. The DNA from DoD, the DoDNA, is strongly represented even in 2017's Call of Duty World War II. In 2016, Day of Infamy was released as a free mod for Insurgency. A year later, in 2017, it would be released as a full retail game. That's not the only parallels with Day of Defeat, however, as the Day of Infamy team was actually given approval by Valve to include DoD maps, art assets, and more in their own game, making it a true spiritual successor, though it certainly takes a lot from Insurgency that wasn't in the original game. The developers of Infamy said about Defeat, "The original DoD creators checked it out and gave us their thumbs up. Valve offered to license Source Engine again to us so we could make the DoD-inspired game. They also encouraged us to make maps inspired by the classic DoD maps and provided permission to use art from their games. We had the opportunity to create an openly spiritual successor to the de facto World War II game many of us grew up on. And that's basically the entire story of Day of Defeat. There's almost nothing said about the game today. There aren't long-winded YouTube videos extolling its long lineage and strong legacy. Searching for it on Kotaku or Polygon will give you basically no results. This is a game that helped define an entire genre from one of the world's most popular developers that came from the same modding community that spawned many of the games on people's top 10 games of all time lists, that continues to inspire games being released nearly 20 years later, and no one even talks about it. No one remembers Day of Defeat, and that's a truly awful thing to have to say. I can't help but imagine that if I were to pitch a game to you today as Team Fortress 2, but with Counter-Strike global offensive shooting and realistic damage, people would respond with, "Man, that sounds cool, I wish they would make that game." DoD represents a lot of fond memories for me. It was a game of patience and tactics, holding still in a dark hole so you can take out the dangerous machine gunner, allowing your team to advance further into the plaza, raining down grenades on enemy placements as you moved through the broken down buildings, trying to find a new angle for a new target. It's the kind of experience modern gaming seems to have thrown away in favor of bombastic cinematics. Did you ever play Day of Defeat or Day of Infamy? Is there a different Half-Life mod you play instead? Let me know in the comments, I'm super excited to hear about it. Please consider sharing this video on Reddit because it really helps us, but feel free not to. You can watch another video in the corner right now, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.